out there in Facebook land and YouTube land. I am the ADHD teacher back from a very long sabbatical. I'm coming back to you with a new segment called Why Tech. This is a segment where I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why I use the types of technology I use in my classroom. These are going to be short segments. I'm going to try and keep them down to 5 to 10 minutes, although I do tend to talk a lot, so hopefully I can meet my goal there. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and move into the Why Tech section. All right, so welcome to the first iteration of Why Tech. This first segment, I'm going to talk a little bit about OneNote. Those of you that know me, Ryan, Patrick, Beth, and Robert Wakeland, you'll know that I absolutely adore OneNote, and I use it constantly in my classroom. So some of the reasons that I really like OneNote is that it keeps me and my students organized. Another great thing is the dog can't eat it. It's a digital notebook, so even if the dog ate their computer, as long as they have another way to access the internet, they can always find their notebooks. It's always accessible. One of the biggest problems with notebooks is when students don't take them home. A lot of times teachers won't send notebooks home because they know that they probably won't come back the next day, or whenever the students are coming back, they forget it, or it gets lost, or it gets destroyed in the rain. And with this, it's always accessible. So if they have an internet connection, both in class or at home, they have access to the content. It's private yet collaborative. The students have their own folders that that only they can see. There is a collaboration space, which is wonderful because then the students can work together and see each other's work. But that's only with specific tasks that you assign the students to. So anytime that they're working on their own, other students are not able to access the work that they're doing. So you have that they do have that safety of the private space where people are not seeing the specific work that they're working on. One of the great things is this is for the teachers and for students. If you understand how Microsoft Word works, which most of you do, OneNote is just a deeper iteration of that. If you know how to use Microsoft Word, you know how to use OneNote. There are obviously some specific features to OneNote that are different than Word, but the basic core framework for OneNote is just like Microsoft Word. Another one of the great things you can do is you can do something called templates. So when I use Cornell Notes a lot in my classroom, and I have a template for that built into my OneNote notebook. What's great about it is that I can actually put links to different items within my lessons. So one of the things that's really heavy is the goals and scales. So if my students click on the goals and scales, it's going to take them directly to the goals and scales that we're using right from their notebooks. And you can't do that with a physical notebook. Obviously they could write down the link, but this is going to do it instantaneously. I also have my sign out log built into it. So when they sign out to use the restroom, it takes them right there, and so that's all built into one space. And then these are the different sections. Since I use Cornell Notes, I've created a Cornell Notes template that I use over and over again. And what's great about it is I can just copy and paste it, and then when I release it to my students, it's there. I don't have to rebuild it every single time. You'll also notice that wasn't paying attention. I should have been checking these off as we're going, but you can put check boxes in here for like to-do lists, so it helps you stay organized. So here's a brief overview of some of the sections and how I use them. Okay, first off is the sections or the tabs. If you have ever used a binder or a notebook with tabs, OneNote notebook, class notebook is exactly that. You'll see over to the left here, I have my colored tabs. I have my welcome section, my templates, my student examples, and the tutorials. And then I also have the little tabs for each of my different students. So it keeps me organized just like I would organize a physical notebook, but obviously it's in a digital space. Pages. Is just like the pages in a notebook. So you flip to a specific tab, and then within those tabs are going to be all of the pages that you use. So in my templates place, I've got my Cornell Notes page, my template page. In my tutorials, I've got my my talking points here that we're talking about. Within the students, you have their tabs, but then once you go into their tabs, they may have a page that they're using to fill in their notes and everything. So it's really great because it's really the type of organization you're already used to. It's not really learning anything new. It's just a new way of accessing those materials. Student versus teacher side here. There is a feature in Class Notebook where the teacher's notebook can be hidden from the students. I don't really use that feature because I put up my blank templates with the questions and the features we're going to be using on that particular day. And so if the student accidentally deletes one of their pages, they can always go to my notebook and pull up the same page, copy and paste it, and put it back in. It doesn't have any of the answers, so it's not like they're going and stealing my notes. It just has the notes template and what we were working on that particular day. So I like to leave that side, I like to leave my teacher side open. My students can see this. They cannot edit this. All they can do is go in and copy and paste. But it makes it easy for us to make any corrections if a student accidentally deletes something. The content library is another really excellent space. What's nice about the content library is just like the teacher section, students can't edit any of the content there, but it's a nice little hub for anything that you use frequently. One of the things that we'll be using next year are these question stems. And so the students can come to this section and see the different question stems to use in their Cornell notes. They can copy and paste this. They can edit anything in it once it's in their particular folder, but they can't delete it. They can't destroy it. They can't get rid of it on my end in the content library, because that's exactly what the content library is for. It's just content that you use regularly that you want to push out to your students. The next one is the collaboration space. Now, this one's a little tricky because anything that gets put into the collaboration space can be edited, manipulated, changed by the students. Now that's great if you don't have one-to-one computers. If you have your students in groups, you can still give them, each student has their own notebook, but you may task out one particular student to take notes that day. They can take their notes, they can copy their notes and drop it into the collaboration space, and then their fellow classmates, when they get home or later on during class, they can go to that collaboration space, grab those notes and drop them right into their notebooks. So they still have all of the things that the other student helped put in without having to go and recopy it down, which can be really difficult to get students to do in the first place. So it does make that a really nice collaboration space. On top of that, collaboration space, you can use it for a variety of ways where you want to have multiple students working on a particular page at the same time. One of the ways that I do that is I actually put together group folders within the collaboration space for each of my groups, and then my students can work specifically in those folders within the collaboration space. And what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to go ahead and quickly show you a completed notebook, or mostly completed notebook. I will show you a couple features here before I move on to that, because with the completed notebook, it doesn't have any of my students embedded in it yet. Obviously, I don't want to have an unsecured video where I've got my student names, which is why I've got Patrick Kelly and Ryan Peets. Those are my tech gurus that always help me out, so I added them as students into this particular notebook. You can see that these are some examples that I actually did steal from my students, but they don't have any of the student names on it, and I placed them in here so you can see what it would look like in a completed fashion. So this would actually be one of my students' notes that they took for a day. Notice that they can highlight. They've got the check boxes. They have all of the notes. If I can get a hold of that, they've got all the notes that we took that day. They've got their summaries. They've got their student side and teacher side, and it's all filled out. And again, this makes it really easy for your students to do a lot of things that are a little bit more difficult to do in a paper notebook. So that being said, let me go ahead and pull open an actual functional notebook. This is the notebook that I'm going to be using for this upcoming 2018-2019 year. We use a program called Amplify, and it's got specific units. So if you look on the left-hand side here, you'll see that I've got tabs for each of my units. And then once I get into the units, I have my different pages. So here are my Cornell notes for the early lessons that we're doing within this particular unit. So if I can grab my scroll bar here, it's being difficult with me. There we go. I lost my scroll bar. All right, so as you can see, I've got all the questions and things that we're going to be going over in class already built into my notes, which I just threw all of these questions into the notes template that I already created. When the students get done, they pick their question stems and go ahead and update their notes as necessary. I have my collaboration space, and if you'll notice, like I said, once you get into the collaboration space, this is really kind of a neat idea. You go by period, so I put all my different periods here on the left-hand side. Notice how they have their own tabs for each period, and then once they get into those tabs, I have the pages are my individual groups. So I usually have my students in groups of 3 or 4, and so each of these is going to be one of those groups, and obviously it's generic right now because I don't have the activity built into the lesson, but this will help keep me and my students organized, and they can collaboratively work in this space, and they all have access to it. So really, OneNote is a fantastic way of integrating digital notebooks into your classroom. If you are familiar with Microsoft Office products, you're already familiar with the way OneNote works. So if you have that desire, I would really say dive into it because it is a really great program, and I've seen a lot of benefits from it with my students, and getting them to interact with their notes on a regular basis really improves their scores. So that's going to bring me to the conclusion of my first Y-Tech transition. So I hope everyone enjoyed, and I hope you now see another tool that you can use in your classroom. Have a wonderful day.